Video games are an entirely powerful medium. It often gets overlooked as second-rate entertainment or not real art by snobby elitists. Over the last 10 years or so, that antiquated thought process has become, thankfully, less so. And while the gaming entertainment medium has grown to exponential heights, there's always been this lingering sense of wanting to be included, or seen as equal to other entertainment conglomerates like film and so on. While this is nice and a positive step forward for the industry, I oftentimes miss the days where games could just simply be games, where messages and statements weren't needed to get a point across or to stick it to those who didn't view the medium as legitimate, but more so, worlds that are just created for the enjoyment and wanderlust of your inner child to get lost in, and see different worlds beyond the bricks, cinder blocks, and sidewalks of everyday life, and spark this creative fuel within you to imagine other worlds beyond your imagination, and again, the reality of life. I grew up with a Super Nintendo and an NES, mostly playing games that resembled characterized versions of real-life things. The closest thing I had to a fantasy game at that time was Super Mario Bros. All-Stars versions of Mario 2 USA and Mario 3. I never really got sucked into those worlds, however, despite all of the colors and sounds and power-ups. It didn't really ruin my enjoyment of those games, and it definitely didn't stop me from playing them, but I wasn't really immersed into it as much as I probably would have liked to have been at that age. Enter 1998. At the time, I was living in a small but manageable apartment in the Bronx. My uncle owned the building and lived on the third floor, while my family lived on the first. I'd regularly go upstairs to visit them because I enjoyed their company and the love they'd give me, but also because my cousin had a PlayStation, something that I, at the time, did not have. It was like the mystical unicorn, except it was gray and made out of plastic. Well, the games I played were colorful. They looked nothing like the games I was seeing on their TV. Going from hand-drawn sprites to fully 3D models that not only looked sharp, but just popped out of the TV a lot better, drew me in. I'll never forget how much better Parappa, a 2D character, looked in comparison to most of my Super Nintendo games at that time, or just how colorful and vibrant the levels in Crash Bandicoot 2 looked in contrast to everything else. It wasn't just that either, but the sounds of the music, the footsteps in particular in Crash 2, specifically during the snow levels, I was just mesmerized by everything this small little, well, I guess small by today's standards, gray box was doing. One game, though, sealed the deal for me. One game took me out of that apartment and transported me into another world. That game was Spyro the Dragon. The visuals, the effects, the gliding, the sounds of gems being collected, it completely blew my young mind away and I was enthralled. It earned me the nickname Dragon by my uncle, something that's still said to me to this day. I was obsessed. I would go upstairs near daily to want to play, and when I couldn't, I would cry to my parents and beg them to get me a PlayStation so I could play Spyro for myself. It also didn't help that both of my cousins who were living there are females and were closer to my sister than they were to me. This was before my brother was born, so it was all I really had, and, well, not much has really changed since then, to be completely honest, except I have a cat now, and Hunter is just the best boy. I love him to death. My parents eventually acquiesced to getting me a PlayStation. They did so, however, under the guise of getting games they wanted to play. Back when they actually cared to play video games and didn't scoff at it, that is. Crash 2, Burning Road, and North by Northwest were the only games I had at the time for PlayStation, outside of the interactive demo disc sampler that came with most PS1s at that time. I'll talk about this lovely little orange disc another time in my Fighting Games and Me video. It's a pretty important piece of my childhood. I was always bummed about the fact that I didn't have Spyro to myself, but at the very least I could always go upstairs and play it, and I think my parents realized that. I did, however, have Crash 2, and even though it wasn't the same, it was a nice substitute for the time being, and if anything else, it was something that brought me closer to my mother, who was a big fan of the game, often playing it in the dead of night, with me trying to cheer her on to beat it. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about artisans. I couldn't stop thinking about the purple dragon and his flame breath, ramming into enemies and collecting gems in these mystical worlds. Or laughing mercilessly at me charring the buttocks of these cowering goons who, once I had my back turned to them, would taunt me with their cheeks out, giving me the best bullseye when they would least suspect it. This silly little purple dragon left such an indelible mark on me, but I was soon about to lose it. I was about to lose a lot more than a 5-year-old could probably handle at that time. my family chose to leave the Big Apple and venture on to a new place in Rhode Island. I won't talk about the move too much here, as I have another video in the works that covers this move in more detail, but I fear the move may have done more harm to me than I realize. I lost access to family, the few friends I had, and I also lost access to the best escape I had in Spyro. In Rhode Island, I didn't really have much. I got bullied a lot in school and at home, and retreated to my room to play video games. School was weird, and even though I was starting late, the teachers picked up on my smarts, and the only thing I had going for me there to take my mind off of things was creative writing. Which, hey, look at me now. The more things change. I think my parents knew that adjusting to Rhode Island was tough on me, and so as a gift for doing well in school and getting through my first half year, I got Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, and for the next couple of years this became my therapy game. It allowed me to detach, to get lost in the worlds Insomniac created, imagining different worlds and fantasies within the game. Becoming the dragon, and saving Avalar from this giant bully much like the ones antagonizing me in real life. When the friends of the tenants from the first floor would come over and do their things and bully me, shoving me off my bike and mocking my glasses and attempting to do pro wrestling moves on me, I had the warm sights and sounds of Avalar to comfort me in the safety of my room. I know life Spyro 2. It quickly became the first PS1 game I beat without having to resort to my non-existent memory card at the time. Between this and Spider-Man 2000, I spent a lot of my time on PlayStation 1, and my time on it was only about to increase even more, much to the chagrin of my parents, but that's another story for another time. My little brother was on his way. My mother was pregnant with him, which meant we had to move from our newly acquired apartment to an actual home to support what was quickly going to become 5 of us living in one area. Because of this, I quickly became affected to the middle child syndrome. I was no longer the baby of the family nor the oldest. My sister was, which meant my needs suddenly took less preference, if at all, to those of my sister or my little brother. Because of this, I learned at a very early age to be self-sufficient, but I also became more and more detached as I often felt ignored and undervalued. Jealousy wouldn't have been the right word to describe what I was going through. I loved my brother, and I understood my sister had her needs, but the sheer neglect I felt was really hard on me. Especially since being at that apartment and adjusting to the new life in Rhode Island with all the bullying I was going through, I really just needed positive reinforcement, and normally I would have had that in New York, but in Rhode Island, I was alone. Every corner I turned to, I had nothing. My father was often exhausted from working and trying to maintain the house, making it somewhat unapproachable to talk to him about my feelings. And my mother was concerned about my little brother, which was understandable given that we were still unaware about his autism, and making sure that my sister was taken care of. And my sister, well, she had her own things that she was worried about, the least of which was me. The only thing I had, outside of family coming to visit every holiday, was Spider-Man, Spyro, and Sparks. And for a while, I was okay with that. The games gave me the positive reinforcement in ways I really needed. Whether it was saving hula girls from an evil tiki monster, to helping out the gem cutters in Glimmer, or even the mayor and his bushy mustache in Metro Speedway, I knew what it was like to feel helpless like them, and to need help and have no one answer. I knew what it was like to be bullied and overwhelmed, and much like Spyro in this game, I knew what it was like to be plucked away from a world you knew was familiar to something completely different and near foreign to you. Yet throughout all of that, Spyro had the ability to selflessly help people even though he was attempting to go on vacation. To be the difference, to stand up to those bullies who thought they were better than everyone else and tell them, "Try me." And even though he may have been in a different world, he still managed to make friends with good people along the way like Alora and Hunter, giving me hope that maybe one day I could do the same. Spyro gave me an escape, and it gave me a ton of joy and valuable lessons I keep with me to this day. I enjoy helping others because this game taught me it was okay to do so, because of my life experiences and realizing that there might be other people just like me going through the same things I am. And we're all stronger together than we are apart. Anyone who knows me knows this to be true, whether it's messaging someone to see how they're doing or just giving them advice and guidance. I care about everyone I come in contact with, and I just want them to be okay. But above all else, the one thing that I will always think of when I think of Spyro, and what it never fails to remind me of, is hope. From younger me hoping to be more like Spyro and standing up to bullies and being brave, or just simply making friends, to hoping to be the example he was to me growing up to others who may need their own Spyro. Someone you can call a friend and be reliable. Someone who, no matter what, is always willing to help. I love Spyro. He has had a profound impact in my life, so much so that I actually named my cat Hunter as a tribute to the game and what it means to me. So the folks over at Insomniac, thank you. And to the folks over at Toys for Bob who created the remaster, thank you as well. Hopefully this new generation gets to experience Spyro in a way that I did growing up, and maybe it'll teach them the same lessons I learned from this amazing purple dragon.